Friday, March 29th, 2019. Where are we with Brexit? Well, I mean, realistically, we're in the same place that we were last week, which is the same place that we were the week before, and the month before, and the year before. We haven't actually progressed in any real terms, in any measurable way. The only thing that's actually changed is what hardline Brexiteers have been promising. So in the beginning, you had people like David Davis and Liam Fox saying, of course we're not going to leave the single market because that's our money maker. It would be stupid to leave the single market. It's right there and every business wants a part of it. Why the hell would we leave it? To now saying, well, of course we're going to leave the single market because WTO is obviously much better. I mean, that's why no one else uses it exclusively. But WTO is better than the single market. And that's it. That's been the only real change. The hardline Brexiteers have just changed what they were promising from the get-go. Sometimes it took a few weeks to change what they were promising. Sometimes it took months, and others it took years. But that's where we are. Interestingly enough, this week has been filled with time wasting. In my opinion, just time wasting. Theresa May has kicked the can down the road to a remarkable level. She knew her deal wasn't going to pass, so she kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, already leaving it incredibly late to begin with. But then she couldn't postpone it anymore, so it got voted down in a historic way. And then she kicked the can down the road again until she could bring practically the same deal back for it to get slapped down again and again and again. So this week, pointless debates going round and round in circles. We're not ready to leave the EU. But we have to leave the EU. We're not ready to leave the EU. Since 2016, we have done practically fuck all to get ready for leaving our moneymaker. This week has been full of votes that were... Some amendments were good, some amendments were crazy. Things like leaving the EU with no deal. That got voted against. So Parliament is not for leaving the EU with no deal. Which means if we do leave the EU with no deal, as it stands, that would be an illegal act. It's not to say that that wouldn't happen, but it would technically be an illegal act. Whether it's going to happen or not, who knows? It's so difficult to call. But of all the things that they voted on, none of them passed. But the most popular thing that didn't pass, kind of makes sense, was the second referendum. So while Tory ministers, hardline Brexiteers, were yelling, that didn't pass, not enough people voted for a second referendum, nothing passed. Nobody voted enough for anything. And that is why I think this has been a huge waste of time, because Parliament can't get their shit together. They can't agree on a single damn topic, a single damn aspect of leaving the EU, and there is so much that they still haven't done. We have solicitors in this country who are practicing law right now who won't be allowed to practice law if we leave the EU with no deal. A lot of our laws and our regs, they're not technically ours, they're the EU's. But we've not had to address these issues because, well, we're part of the European Union, so it's not really an issue. But when we do leave, there are going to be gaping holes in our legal system. They will have to be filled, but they're going unaddressed. I've said before, the money. The EU is responsible for 80% of this country's income. Services and it goes on and on and on. Subsidies for agriculture and so on and so forth, from green deals and research, and I've been through it all before. So the most popular amendment that didn't get the vote was they didn't get enough support, was the second referendum. So being that was the best of what was voted against, and being that Theresa May's deal is not going to get passed, people don't like it. Labour doesn't like it because it doesn't protect workers' rights. It doesn't protect us. The DUP doesn't like it because DUP and hardline Brexiteers don't like it because it has the Irish backstop. I'm sorry, but there is no alternative to the Irish border. You cannot have a singular landmass with no physical border where one part of it is part of a customs union and then right there is not. Again, one of the things that has changed is the lie. And now Brexiteers are saying that there is a magical technology that exists that will take care of that problem. It doesn't exist. If it did, we'd be bloody using it. But it doesn't. So given that May's deal is not going to go through, the best option I see would be to have a second referendum. Now I know a lot of people don't like that, but the first referendum was leave the EU, stay in the EU. Leave the EU is a shit ton of issues. How are we going to leave the EU? Are we still going to try to have access to the single market? What exactly is going to happen with the Irish border? What deals can we get from the EU beforehand? And bear in mind that the EU is going to change its leadership fairly soon with the European elections. There was so much more, because leaving the EU is not a simple thing to do. It takes a lot of infrastructure, it takes a lot of preparation. And as I said at the start of this video, what has changed this week from last week and last month and the month before and the year before is practically nothing. We are not set up for customs. We are not set up for border patrol. We are not set up for immigration. We are not set up for so many things. Despite what that Muppet Elfric keeps coming out and saying, Dover's not prepared. Dover will come to a standstill because we're going to have to check the lorries and freights that come in through Dover. We don't have the staff. We don't have the resources. We don't have the damn space. Dover's really not that big. But none of those things have been addressed. And when Remainers or Ramonas like myself brought them up, it was shouted down as Project Fear. Wasn't resolved, it was just shouted down. So the best option would be to take it back to the people. The petition of 5.8 million people to retract Article 50 is not something that people should just skip over. The Million Man March in regards of protesting Brexit, again, not something that should be skipped over. Yes, there were counter protests. Nigel Farage and that twat Tommy Robinson led their own marches in support of Brexit, but again, with those supports, the numbers were really low, and there were protesters at these rallies that got counted as being part of the rally rather than protesting it. So the best option would be a second referendum. Will Theresa May put that forward? I doubt it, because Mogg and Johnson, David Davis, Michael Gove, all these prominent leavers, all these prominent Brexiteers, Brexit leavers, they don't like it. And they're still threatening, or I believe they're threatening, to leave the party. And that's May's priority. Protecting party above all else. The same as damn near every single Conservative politician.